Hey everybody, back to talk some more metal, and on today's episode, I'm going to be looking at the Razor discography and ranking their albums while I'm at it. And keep in mind, as always, just my personal preference. So, to me, Razor are the best Canadian metal band ever, the most Canadian metal band ever, and when you're looking at the highlights of their discography, they made some of the best albums in Canadian metal history, and metal history for that matter. They formed in 1983 in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. And Guelph is not a suburb of Toronto. It's a full hour west of the city. But my, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, she went to college there. And I have countless of memories from Guelph. And I haven't been there a while. Need to make a little day trip out there soon. But anyways, we're going to start off with the debut EP, Armed and Dangerous. It was released in 1984, and several of these songs would go on to be represented on the debut full-length album. But the songs exclusive to here that I am the biggest fan of, it's got to be the title track, Armed and Dangerous, and Killer Instinct. And again, this is an EP, so Razor have 9 full-length albums, and we're going to start looking at those right now. So, my number 9 isn't really a surprise to most fans. It's 1997's Decibels. Yeah, this came out on Hypnotic Records, a Canadian metal label from the 90s. I definitely got several of their releases, but don't think about them too often. But I do like this album. It's not a bad album. But it is, even for Razor standards, extremely one-dimensional. I'm not crazy about the lyrics. And Bob Reed's vocals, they seem to have like a weird effect on them, like kind of a metallic sheen that's laid across it. Maybe it's natural, but it sounds a little bit artificial to me. And there's maybe an album or two that people would tell you is worse than this. But the same way I don't put Saint Anger at the bottom of Metallica's discography, I put Death Magnetic at the bottom, because to me, it's just nothing interesting and kind of boring. So a quality release that to me is a little bit not special, that's going at the bottom for me. Even still, killer riffs as always, and my favorite tracks on here are The Game, Great White Lie, and the closer, Violence, Gun Control. Number 8, Custom Killing from 1987. Bit of a style switch here, but I don't really agree with the sentiment that Razor went technical thrash on here. To me, it's just a matter of the songs have been stretched out, the longest songs of their career, and I don't think it really adds to the album. A lot of stops and starts that, again, don't really add to the songs. Russian Ballet is a short closer that I keep saying doesn't really add much. And a couple samples on here I could do without. However, Forced Annihilation, that's a great track. And my favorite is definitely Going Under, a song that I would have liked to see Razor go further with, because the original vocalist, Sheepdog McLaren, he will leave after the album following this, because I think he wanted to go in a more mainstream direction. Just, songs about partying, a little bit more accessible. And that's what we have here on Going Under. And I definitely would have liked to see a bit more of a push in that direction, but that would be about it. Number 7, the most recent album, Cycle of Contempt from 2022. Not to mention their first album in 25 years. it will be 25 years between 1997's Decibel and this one. Very, very mixed feelings on this. Are they good short thrash metal songs? For the most part, yeah. My favorites being Jabroni and Setup. And I've heard a lot of this out there, and not to beat a dead horse, but the vocal patterns are extremely simple and repetitive, and not trying to be nasty here, but the lyrics are really bad. There's no getting around it. Just accusationary, like just talking to like an enemy directly. A lot of I's, a lot of U's, and then there's some tracks like Punch Your Face in, All Fist Fighting, King Shit. Not into it, but again, a couple more tracks I quite like are First Rate Hate and Darkness Falls. Number 6, Shotgun Justice, the 6th album from 1990. And the first album with Bob Reed on vocals. So Sheepdog had left the band at this point, and we got a new vocalist that's around to this present day. My clear and somewhat obvious favorites are the opener, Miami, and the closer, The Pugilist. But let's not forget about Burning Bridges and Parricide. This is the second in a 3-album run that I consider to be Razor's most fast, aggressive, and violent work. But my least favorite of that era. Getting into the top 5 now. Number 5 is the 3rd album, 1986's Malicious Intent. A bit of a mixed bag here. I've heard some people say this is kind of like 80s thrash metal with a bit more of a mainstream touch to it. I don't really hear that. I mean, that album cover might give you that impression, but I think it's still Razor doing what they do. So there's a couple tracks on here that I'm not that into, and I think it ends kind of weak with KMA and Mosh. But my top 3 songs on here are Stand Before Kings, Rebel Onslaught, Challenge the Eagle, and gotta give a shout out to the opener, Tear Me to Pieces. Number 4, the 5th album, 1988's Violent Restitution. You will see this in most bands' top 3. It was almost there for me, but not quite. I don't find this a particularly memorable album. Definitely, again, from that fast and violent era, but it does kind of gloss over me sometimes. I mean, the first track, The Martial Arts, just opens with career-defining 30-second throat-ripping scream from Sheepdog, and then just proceeds to blast into one of Razor's finest moments. So The Martial Arts, I think that's one of Razor's most well-known songs, and probably the best one on here. But I also gotta give shouts out to Enforcer and I'll Only Say It Once. Number 3, maybe a bit high for some people, but I'm going with the 7th album, 1991's Open Hostility. This is my first Razor album, and the one that really gets me going. I consider this the real head cracker of the discography. And my 3 favorite tracks on here are Road Gunner, Sucker for Punishment, and Bad Vibrations. Okay, top 2. Real tough to pick, but I went with number 2, Evil Invaders. This is pretty much in every Razor fan's top 3, if not in the top spot. It's their second album from 1985. And just looking at the track listing here, I mean, Thrash Dance, Legacy of Doom, Instant Death, Speed Merchants, Tortured Skull, could go on and on. But my three favorites are definitely Cutthroat and the title track, Evil Invaders, which is probably my favorite Razor song. And if you ask me, let's make that the Canadian metal national anthem for sure. And I was thinking about putting this at number one. And even though there's one album I like better, I will say if you're just your average metal fan and want a Razor album, this is probably the first one I would recommend to check out. So, time for my number one, the debut album, also from 1985, Executioner's Song. It's just the most evil, old school, has the most metal feeling to it. Take This Torch and Distant Thunder, those are my two favorites, but Death Race, City of Damnation, Escape the Fire, classic after classic. And I think if nothing else, I hope people out there check out the first two albums, although there's tons of great stuff in the Razor catalog. So that's my number one, Executioner's Song. Thanks for checking it out. Check out some Razor, and see you next time. Thank you.